Okay.
Got it.
Welcome to Shays Spiritual Insights, as I said before.
I have no idea what that
And
is. It sounds
I
like
think,
a commercial to
Susan,
me.
are you working now?
Well, normally I set my volume and I leave it there. So obviously you've been playing with the volume a little bit.
Not on your site, I haven't.
No?
Might be able to send them a chat message and let them know that we can hear them, but
Okay.
They better watch
That's a
what
good
they say.
idea.
I don't know.
Mute. There you go.
All right. Well, we have everyone. So one of the questions that came up was based on the last post, which was
Normally that's where it is. That's where you go.
awareness and beliefs. And we talked about that, and that's going to be, by the way, the beliefs and awareness, and it's going to be what our meditation is going to be based on. And the question is, what exactly does it mean by your
Sometimes
frequency
they
of your
have
being going higher?
Here that you can use them.
And that has to do with the
Chat. I don't know what the hell that is.
the awareness of our being expanding outward and
Shoot.
upward. And as it does, it anchors higher and higher in as it goes, it expands in the threads of our being, it anchors higher and higher into the
Try and get
etheric
it
realms,
on-
into the higher aspects of our
On
being.
my computer?
Yeah, that's or on your iPad.
Excuse me, Jeff,
Yeah.
can you mute everybody, please?
Hmm?
Can you mute everybody, please?
I think I can. Let's see what we have.
As the host, you can mute everybody.
Okay, well, I'm going to work on that. Okay, I'm not.
Oh, I don't know.
A lot of the fancy stuff here.
Email or
Zoom meeting is using your microphone. What does that mean?
Zoom meeting is one.
I wonder if I
Mute.
plug this in, if I can get it.
Well, usually what that'll do is
I don't know.
obstruct the sound of the.
Hold on, I'm unmuted.
Okay, I think you did it.
Do I have it?
No,
No, not yet.
Audio settings. Let's see what I have here.
Turn on the light. Yeah.
I've got all my speakers, audio, video, general, share screen, recording. I got the audio. That's just which one I have.
Why
Let's
that
see if I
wasn't-
can turn it.
It's not it. It's on the other side. Maybe it-
I don't know if I can.
Out of it and go to my site.
Let's go over here and see if I
See
can
if
get
it-
Susan. Okay, I think we've got them muted.
there you
Can you
go.
hear me now? All right.
Yep.
I'm going to continue while they're trying to figure out their technical difficulties. So as I was mentioning, one of the questions that came up, what exactly does it mean when they say our frequency of our being is being,
Turn the volume.
I'm muting you, Susan, so we don't have to hear the conversation because as you're trying to figure out the technical difficulties there. All right. All right. And ask, what does it mean as we raise the frequency of our being? And it has to do with our awareness
Alt plus
expanding
A.
outward into our being. As the incoming energies raise our frequency, it expands our awareness, and our awareness anchors higher and higher in our being. And as we do that, we bring in higher frequency and higher
No idea.
intensity energies.
The mute means
our
it's not.
being.
Mute
coming.
means it's muted. It's
It brings higher and higher
Mute.
frequencies
so you want
that we
it
Yeah.
are bringing through.
I need your
So
microphone. to
I'm
press on the space
muting you
key.
guys so we don't. There you go. There you go. So that's what that's about. I don't know if that's real clear or not. What we're doing is because our awareness
My
is
site
extending
and
outward,
try and get this.
as our awareness extends outwards, it anchors it higher and it brings in higher frequency energies. And then that also affects the wiring itself. You could say there's an architecture that guides the energies as they come in. And when anybody who's had an energetic session with me or a combined session with Deborah and I, that often is one of the things that if one were ready, there's like this invisible structure. You could say it's like in places that electronic facilities, they have this troughing that they use to put all the wiring in because they have thousands and thousands of wires. And it's what holds the wires in a certain place, and it keeps you could say in a way it keeps things guided to go a certain particular from here to there and go this way instead of over here. The same thing is true of our being. We have this invisible structural part of our being. I call it the light body template. It basically sets forth the structures that all these energies, that all the wiring flows through. That actual invisible structure itself is part of the Christ body. It's the different octaves that come down into our body. And it is what guides the energies to have the meridians, to have the channels, to have all the things that are happening within this body that we operate in, both energetically and physically. And that can be upgraded as well. And that happens to people. In fact, some people that have had here the sessions, their higher guidance has taken the old pattern because it was fine for then, but they're ready to move on, and it gets replaced with one that can handle a higher frequency spectrum. And then when we grow and grow and grow, when we're ready, then that'll get replaced again. And it happens organically, but it definitely happens during sessions when a person's ready. So that's what I mean by the increased frequency. Is we're anchoring to higher, our awareness is anchoring at higher levels, bringing in higher energies through our wiring. And then the actual structures of our being itself, the invisible, I don't know how you say, framework that guides all the different energies and all the different systems, it can be upgraded as well. And it's part of the Christ body. So that's the answer I wanted to provide tonight during the Shays Spiritual Insight. I've had 3 different people ask similar questions, and I thought, well, maybe this is something that needs to be talked about. So if anyone has any questions about that, I'll be more than happy to talk more about it. But at this point, that's all I have. And Deborah says hi. She's out and about. She's doing canning now. Right now, this is canning season. So we're getting lots and lots of things put into jars, turkey soup and canned turkey, you name it, she's doing it. So, and with
Hey, Jeff,
that,
I have a question about the raising higher.
yes.
It might be just the limits of language, but I can also feel a great expansion at times, but I realize I have to focus on the expansion just as much as I would on going up, going higher.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering what the difference is, or does it make a difference? Is it important to expand as we go up at all?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up. The meditation we did back in June focused on that. We talk about that our awareness actually expands out because our wiring, the threads of our being are intertwined throughout creation. That's in a creation that's constantly moving. But if you've got to kind of think of it in a static sense. And so we have it's going outward. As it goes outward, it also goes upward. And we usually think of higher frequencies, but it goes outward into the different aspects of different realms. And it goes beyond even what we think of as frequency. But so is there a difference? No, when we goes outwards, it also goes upwards. And that was where the focus was in June, was that when we go focus on going upward or outward in any direction, it goes in. What happens is our awareness goes out in all directions, kind of like a balloon. It doesn't necessarily do it evenly, but it does go out. And so the short answer to your question would be, no, it doesn't make any difference, because by the virtue that what's happening to you is happening, your awareness is expanding.
It's sort of like seeing things in 3 dimensions instead of 2 dimensions.
Yes, and it's even more than that. It's like 4 and 5 dimensions, but goes beyond what our brain can even process. So, but thank you for asking that. Good question. Did I answer it? Yes. All right, let's go over here to Brooke. And oh, you two are here. That's wonderful. So, does you have any question, comments, any thoughts, anything at all? Either one of you.
Well, I asked Teresa to join me tonight because I was just getting on. She just got home too.
Wonderful.
She has a little situation just came up. I don't know how much she wants to share or even if she does, but I thought, oh, you might get some insight from your higher guides or anything about the incident that's coming up. So we'll see if she wants to share something since it's her stuff. But
Well,
this is
if you want, and
this
if
is
you don't, that's fine
for
too.
those of you that have not met my wife. This is Teresa. Good to see everybody.
It's so good to see you.
Well, at the time, Brooke and I had kind of a quick whirlwind romance and married 3 years ago. It
Mhm.
was our 3rd anniversary this week. And my children, I have 4 grown children, didn't take it very well. I'd been keeping in communication with them all along my journey when I divorced my husband of 37 years and then was single and I kept communicating with them that, I decided I'm a person who really doesn't want to be single. And so I communicated with them my dating journey over a year. And then I communicated with him. I met this wonderful man. And it became obvious when they all blew up when I said, we're engaged. And they said, what? And I realized they didn't even know I was divorced from their dad. And then the younger 3 are more mellow kids, and especially the youngest had seen the last number of years. He's quite a bit younger than the older 3, and he understood. And the middle 2 are more trusting. I said, okay, obviously there were things going on that we didn't know about, but we trust you, Mom. We love you, Mom. And the oldest one and her husband didn't. And Brooke and I drove up to Santa Fe from Las Cruces and met them because they were like, how can you bring this strange person into the sacred circle of our family? And I was like, just the same way we brought your husband into the sacred circle of this family. So we tried to have a conversation with them, and it ended up they just yelled. And Brooke, for a long time, and Brooke finally said, well, this conversation is over. We're getting married. We look forward to visiting with you over the years and continuing in relationship together. And but my daughter, her husband walked out on her 2 months after we got married, and we didn't know that they were in. We knew there was some trouble, but we didn't know. We thought they were working things out, so we didn't know they were. So evidently, they were in a really bad place, and then my daughters continued to treat me disrespectfully. So a year ago, I wrote a letter and said, you know what, this is not going to happen. We're going to have a real relationship. I will always love you. I will never judge you, but we have to have a real relationship where I respect you and you respect me. It goes both ways. And that's what it has to be, Lacey, or we can't have a relationship. And that would make me horribly sad, as it has. But this is the way it has to be. And she contacted me today and said on Monday she wants to meet with my daughter-in-law and myself. Michelle is kind of a mediator. And I'm very comfortable with Michelle being there. She's a wonderful young woman. And I think Lacey thought she would feel safer if Michelle was there. I would feel safer if Michelle was there. So our history is that her dad made her the golden child and told her I was always against her. I was really upset with her. He would calm me down. And then he would go tell her, I mean, that's what he would tell her. And he would go tell me, I don't know what's wrong with this kid. She's so rebellious. And I'll talk to her again. But this is not what I talked to her about. And so we were both living in different worlds
Mhm.
with respect to what we understood from her dad. And so this is, Brooke said, wow, I'm getting all kinds of red flags that you're going to meet with your daughter.
You're kind of breaking up a little bit from my end. Okay.
Brooke said, because I just told him about this. We just got home and he said, I'm getting all kinds of red flags that you're meeting with your daughter because I don't want her to continue in this kind of bad behavior, which she usually has done.
Mhm.
And so that is the stuff. If that doesn't make sense, ask me questions. But of course, this has gone on for 40 years. She's 40 next month.
Okay. I missed some of that because it was breaking up. I'm sorry. I probably should have said something earlier.
Okay.
Yeah. But so the question is, what specifically are you looking for the insights on? Is as to what's behind it?
Michelle says that their dad has kind of dropped them being all my kids, that he's off with his new wife on adventures and doing things with her family in Mexico and really doesn't talk to the kids anymore. They're 40, 38, 33, and 23.
Okay.
And formerly he was quite an attentive dad, kind of shallow, but still loving. And so Brooke was saying, so dad dropped her, she's hurting, so she's reaching out to you. And I want this to go well because I don't want to have to do it again. I guess I did have a reconciliation with her ex-husband. Now they divorced. And he had some questions, how, because we had parented him a lot. His parents were highly critical of him. And so my ex-husband and I had parented him a lot. They were 20, he was 22 when they were married. Lacey was 21, and supported him and cheered him on. And, and he's like, what do I do with, I thought you guys were really my parents. And what did any of that mean since you got divorced? I said, it meant exactly what we said. I always called him my number 5. I said, I will always love you. I will always will. And he's remarried now and is having his first child in a couple of weeks. And I'm thrilled about it because he's another son. I am not sure how to do this well with Lacey, that will really get there, will really make positive steps, and that she won't twist it. She can be just as narcissistic as her dad.
And I was going to say, this has to do with her characteristics. And as I'm processing it, the only thing that I'm getting from your high self is just to be authentically you. You can't do much about how she is. You can just be authentically you and be heart-centered and say, this is where we are. This is what I'm about. This is, where we are in our relationship, and or at least where I am in the relationship. She has, I'm trying to see, I can see it visually. She has different, I don't want to call it fractured, that's not it, but different parts of her psyche that operate, they communicate with one another, but she can shift between them, and it shifts how she interacts from some periods from the period. And you've experienced it. You wonder like, what's this shift about? What's happening here? Why is this going on? And that's why. And it has to do with some unresolved things in her own past. And I'm going to say, for those who believe in them, I'm going to say past lives for her. And she's come in, and believe it or not, I think you would believe this. You have made a big difference for her. Being the relationship that you have pursued and even though she may indicate, although it may seem at times from one side or the other, that things are not as they should be, and then oftentimes they probably aren't at where they need to be. You have managed to help open her up and open the situation up to allow things to get better. But this is part of her characteristic, and she's working her way through it. So I just be authentically you at this point. That's what your high self says. Just continue. And it may do some of this, and you may experience some of that, and just know that's not you.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not. And it's good. Boy, I'm sensing from your perspective, it's a big challenge, because you can sense this as you're interacting with her. You can sense the dynamics of what's happening in the relationship and wondering what's going on. And it has to do with her and these different, I'm going to call it parts of her psyche, and they're like little sub-personalities almost. And they can talk to one another, but they're not as well integrated as, we all have different aspects of our being, but hers are not as well integrated as they have to be. And it has to do with traumas left over from previous lives. And and the thing that's helping her, I will just say, is your openness and your loving openness with her is helping. And I will say, in spite of her own characteristics, some of her own characteristics, she's truly a beautiful, wonderful person, but she has some challenges going on in her life. So I hope I can, as much as I want to answer over in a public forum, if we want to talk, one-on-one, please call up and we can talk more in depth. But I think that's the answer, that really does describe what's going on. And some of it's behind the curtain for you, and it's going to remain there until she wants it to not be. That's just where things are going to be. It's, don't pay any attention to that man behind the curtain, because they don't, that opens her up to looking at stuff that she's just not there ready to do yet. Although she's opening, again, it's better than you might perceive. I don't know how, I think you have a pretty good sense, but it's even better than what you think, because I truly believe love transforms everything. It truly does. Loving, even when the other person may be responding in anger, when we're sending out love, even when they're responding in anger, it is making a difference. And I'm not saying that she's doing that, but I'm just saying, even when they respond negatively or not open up, the love is working its way through, and it really is with her.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And if you do have more questions, you can just call sometime and we can talk more.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, Susan, have the technical difficulties been overcome? I can't hear you. I'm going to see if we can you unmute?
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. We've got
Oh,
Verizon.
great. Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm so glad to be connected. Greg, is that a real beach behind you, or is it a photograph? I want to be there.
I know, I'm jealous. It's absolutely awesome. It looks like the wind is blowing and
I
everything.
know he's got the trees even moving, for heaven's sakes.
So do you need to share, ask, or both?
Well, it's kind of interesting here, because we are now denied access to restaurants, so we can't go in and eat anywhere. So,
Oh my goodness.
yeah, because we're not double injected. So Dick and I ended up in a cedar forest outside of Fernie, eating sandwiches and and drinking hot chocolate in the rain the other day because we couldn't go in and eat anywhere. So, I mean, we have a sense of humor about that, and it's still happening. So, hey, it's not about if I come home, it's about when I come home,
Mhm.
and that I'm looking at it in a positive way. One of the biggest things that I have a question about was I watched a YouTube with a couple of people who are fairly well-known intuitive people who give a lot of advice and information and insightful stuff.
Mhm.
And at the end of it, I was really perturbed is not the right word. I was puzzled because their closing comment was that you can't be a healer unless you get healed yourself. And I can't believe that, because when do you get to the point where you say, I'm healed myself? Like
Mhm.
in my room here where I work with people, when do I get to the point to say, well, oh gosh, I can be a healer now, although I'm still working on my own stuff.
Boy, I am so glad you brought that up. And I, you know, there's different viewpoints on this, and I'm going to share my perspective, what I observe. Whenever, and many of us who do spiritual work, one of the things we do is we center in our high self. In fact, before I do any session, I'm very much centered in my high self, doing the session from my high self and bypassing all the other stuff. And when we do that, it doesn't mean the other stuff doesn't exist. It means that the experience that the person on the other end is going to be, the recipient, the person we're working on is going to receive, is the energies from the divine coming through us, through our high self, for them. That's why, you know, most of the people that do spiritual work, you know, it really is them. It is they doing the work, not us. We're guided to do our part, but we really are conduits and instruments both at the same time for that. So my answer to that is that I think that expresses to me, if that in that statement, and I can only take it at face value, that it's a misunderstanding of the nature of this. We are all divine beings, but we all have some challenges we're working on. The secret, of course, is that whenever we do our work, we stay centered in our high self, in our connection with the divine, and are clear conduits for that particular purpose. And then in our own space, of course, as we do that, as we actually do get healed. But in helping others, we are actually allowing ourselves to be an instrument of the divine and a conduit of the divine, while we are helping someone else and doing the work that their higher guidance has for them. We ourselves are being worked on. You could say the healer is being healed, because, as you know, when we're doing sessions on them, they're doing sessions on us. So I guess I'm going to leave it at that. Yes, we have things to work on, but we don't have to bring that into a healing session. I mean, that statement presumes that if we're not completely walking as Christ here, that we're unable to do the work. And that's just, in my mind, simply not true.
Okay, I'm glad we talked about this, because it really, I mean, I've heard that before, and I've said, no, that doesn't fit for me. Because I'm coming from my heart whenever I'm doing my work.
Yes.
And opening myself up to being a conduit. And I know my feeling is, once I get that healed, I can go and get wings and work on the other side.
Yes, and we're all on our way to working up all the other pieces and parts that we have within us. But yes, I'm glad you asked that question, and I've heard others. I've kind of heard that before, and it just never came up in conversation. So I'm glad it was brought up. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome. Nancy, do you have anything to share or any questions?
You know, I don't. I just thought I'd come and check in and say hi and see what everybody else was asking.
Well, we're so glad you're here.
Hi, guys.
Bringing
Hi.
your energy for all of us to share.
Yeah, it's nice seeing you.
Yeah, good seeing you.
Nice seeing you, Susan. It's been a long
You
time.
too, Nancy.
Yeah.
Bye.
Oh. I'm trying to look at the screen and then look at the camera here, so I hope that's not annoying for all of you. So I appreciate your patience with it. Okay, Pat, do you have anything to share or anything to ask, or either or both? Are you there, Pat? I think Pat may be away from her computer.
No, I'm here. Just
Oh, are
wasn't
you?
unmuting for me. I was unmuting in the wrong spot. Hi,
Okay.
everybody.
iPads.
Hi. So I think I've been trying to figure out what I wanted to ask, like for 2 days. And what's
Mhm.
coming up right now is I am curious, as many of us are, as to what you may get an information on this new, they're calling it the new world or the new planet. Are you seeing it as being a new planet or a new world? Will there be, are you getting anything on it?
Boy, this is again, I have to share my perspective, and I share one um, similar to Dolores Cannon when I read her Convoluted Universe series, and I think it was in book 3 or 4. I don't recall which one. It talks. So my first answer is going to be yes. There is a new year's Earth. We talk about a lot. It's been called the New Age, the incoming energies, the fourth or fifth dimension, the new Earth, but it all is talking about these higher realities of in which coexist with us, and we shift to them. And what I noted when in one of the, and I'm going to just give you the Reader's Digest version of it with what Dolores Cannon had. So a person was regressed, and they talked about it where and I think of it as spectral, meaning it's not just this here or here, the new Earth is up here. I think it shifts up in octaves. And I always borrowed that from June because it reminds me, the higher dimensions remind me of musical notes. It really does go up step by step by step. So what happens, and I'm sharing my perspective on it because as we know in metaphysics, when we make a decision, there's an aspect of us that makes the other decision. And I have a real time trying to talk about it, but I talk about what moved, and I just call it my focus. And I found someone else who calls it the same thing. So my answer is yes, as we connect to these higher energies, we are shifting into the energies of the new Earth, and we can actually shift into them. Many of you have heard me talk about path shifting, and I think this is a good time to talk about it. I'm going to give you again the shorter version. When I was on board ship, I'd read about path shifting. I borrowed that from Richard Bach, by the way, from his book 1. And it was a fictional story there, but this actually happened to me. I was on board ship one morning, and I was out doing my stuff, and I interacted with a whole lot of people. The chief engineer, I talked to what's called the cargo mate, the person who moves the cargo from one ship to the other and all that sort of thing. And I was dealing with all these different people. And then a path shifting event happened, and I didn't recognize it at first. But what had happened is, although the ship looked the same, everyone on board the ship looked the same, all the events of that morning were gone. I had received a message because I was I ran the message center, and I got all the message traffic ran through my division, everyone, and I had them, and I had a hard copy. I printed it out of a naval message that said, go do X, Y, and Z. It told me to go do these things that I needed to go do before a certain length of time. And it was classified message. And so I started out doing that. And in the morning, everyone on board ship that I talked to had known about that message. They all knew about it. They had read it themselves, and they were all doing their little part of the message because each person had their little piece of it. Then after I came back for a break, probably around lunchtime, I think I'm trying to recall the time, doesn't matter. I came back after lunch, and something had happened. I had shifted. And I'm going to talk about this in the form of the new Earth. We had shifted to this higher frequency. I'd shifted to this other path. And all the conversations of that morning, no one knew about. Furthermore, the naval message that I held in my hand, I went back to my computer to go say, you know what, let me go reread this thing because maybe I missed something. And it wasn't on my computer. Now, back in those days, computers weren't as reliable. So I always made a backup of all my stuff that I did. Everything I got it that morning, I immediately made a copy of it so I didn't lose it. It wasn't there either. So I went back to the people in the message center that worked for me. I said, hey, find this message. They can't find it. They went back to the people who originated it back in Honolulu, I think is where it came from. It was called Nick Tam's Pack, but that doesn't make any difference. It's just one of those acronym things. Anyway, what I realized that I had shifted. So my answer is going to be yes, the new earth is coming in. As we connect to these energies, we automatically shift to that reality, and we interact with alternate aspects of the people who have also shifted to that reality. That's been my experience. And other people have different viewpoints on it. So if you see it differently, I understand, but that's going to be, the best explanation I can share is that as we shift, that aspect of us that moves to this new reality, we're now operating at this new reality, although much of it looks the same. In Dolores Cannon's book, what they talked about was that as we shift high enough, for example, they used, as you shift to the next higher level, the building that was red in town now all of a sudden is gray. All of a sudden, like, hey, when did they repaint that building? And as you move enough, then a lot of it stays the same, but more and more things change as we move higher and higher up. So that's going to be my abbreviated explanation. Because I think different people, because we're all unique beings and we all have unique relationships to God or the divine, I think we also have different experiences in creation. So that's going to be that's been my experience, and I hope that helps.
It's excellent. And I'm hearing you say that probably it will be different for each one of us, but that would there be a possibility that sometimes as a group, we may kind of shift altogether?
Yes. And that's the soul group aspect of it. And so just as we talked about before, individuals have a life plan, and there's all the things we can do. We can do this route, that route. We can go higher. We can stay this level. We can choose how we experience the lessons, the things that we come to learn. The same is true collectively as all our different life paths come together within our collective soul group. There's the shared aspect of it. And yes, the whole soul group can, and that's part of what's happening right now. That's why I talk about when I write the posts, because these incoming energies not only shift the earth upwards, because it's an entity, it's a consciousness itself, Gaia and all that, but our soul group, the collective parts of it also shift up. So the shared experience parts we will share in, but we also have individual parts that are unique to us. And a good episode to watch on this that really, one thing I liked about Star Trek and Star Trek The Next Generation is they dealt with a lot of this stuff way back then. And there was an episode, I think season 6, it was called Parallels. And it talks about this very issue. Worf ends up going on a shuttle and he runs into this anomaly, temporal anomaly, and he keeps shifting between realities. And I said, oh my gosh. I watched that episode. I said, hey, this happens to me all the time. And by the way, this happens, I haven't mentioned this, I don't think in this forum before. I've written about it, but all of us within our life paths, and whenever people are talking to me, their higher guidance often shows me their life plan, and I can see they're on this segment here, and I can see there's a shift coming up for them, a choice. They can go, I usually see it visually. I see left, center, or right, and I can usually figure out, they tell me enough to say, this one has to do with this type of a decision. If you choose this one, it has to go about going this direction. They give me the detail that's necessary to communicate without short circuiting the person's learning that they have to make. In other words, I don't short circuit the very decision that they're supposed to make themselves. But anyway, we're constantly shifting between these paths all the time. So I want to share one thing that happened to me. A lot of this has been dramatic, and I think the universe has done that for me to make it a point so that I know it's just not in my head. This really happened. Back in 2007, I was listening to satellite radio because I have it in my car, and I'd heard, and they had this news bulletin, Liza Minnelli has died of a heart attack. And I said, oh my goodness. And then for the next week on the radio, on my universe and my personal experience, they were talking about how women can be asymptomatic with heart disease and so on and so forth. And I thought, wow, that's amazing. Okay, so fast forward 3 years. Obviously, many path shifts had happened for me as well as probably everyone else. of course, we have our collective shared experience that we all have that keeps our common experiences so that we have a frame of reference we can talk about in our life. So 3 years later, I'm listening, they said, and now Liza Minnelli has been nominated for some theatrical award. So I had shifted in my path, and on that path, Liza Minnelli had died. At some point in the next 3 years, I'd shifted enough to where on that particular path thread for me, I call them threads and strands and things, Liza Minnelli was still there. And Dr. McKimmey, for those who knew him, he'd had this kind of thing happen to him quite often. And when I shared this experience, I said, listen, I now find it very difficult to even discuss history with anyone because I'm not ever sure at any one particular point in time what history is actually in play right at this point. Is Lincoln, was he still one of our prior presidents, or was he not one of our prior presidents? You know, that kind of thing. So anyway, but I share that to say that this can happen to all of us. And as we're ready, and as we shift higher and higher, and as we're ready to let go of old, lower earthly ties, the universe can shift us to these paths where our history changes. And the reason why that happens is because you're ready to have a more dynamic experience. You're ready for things to happen faster and in a more dynamic way. And you're able to let go of things faster. And what it means is your growth is accelerating. So if you start having this happen to you, that's a good sign. Don't be unnerved. Just know that it's okay if historical events that you thought you knew have changed.
Thank you a lot, Jeff. Actually, your last statement, I really felt that. I felt that shift in myself. So
Have you had that happen to you, Pat?
somewhat,
Mhm.
somewhat. I wouldn't say I'm always aware of it.
Well, don't be surprised if it does happen. When I shared it with Dr. McKimmey, I said, listen, Dr. McKimmey, I just have to share this with you because I figure if anyone's going to know about it, you. And he says, oh yeah, that's happened to me lots of times. I said, oh, okay, great. You know, good. I feel much better. But what I've discovered is it happens at varying points, I say periods in my life, where all of a sudden I'll go through a whole bunch of periods of past shifting where I've shifted this one and this historical event changes, and it could be a small thing. It could be a bigger thing. It doesn't have to, and it can be something out of the blue. It could be something like some product that I used to think existed and that path doesn't exist. And then when I shift back over again, that product exists again. It can be, it's not necessarily big things. It can be big and small things alike. But then I'll go through periods where everything's stable for a while. So what my higher guidance has told me is that why that happens is because as we're ready to allow what we consider to be reality to be more dynamic, it will be more dynamic if we're ready for it and if it's part of our path. It has to be kind of both of those.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you for asking. I love all these questions. Thank you. It's actually one of my favorite subjects. I also like to talk about auras and things like that, and about the different facets of auras, because people think there's just the one aura. But just like the light spectrum, if you shift to the infrared spectrum, we see things that we don't see in the visual spectrum, or if you go to the X-ray spectrum, or whatever one it is. The same is true of our auras, by the way. And I learned that from my friend Kay. She used to talk about, yeah, when I look at the medical aura, I said, the medical aura, what's the medical aura? And then I realized, I tuned into her and figured out what she was doing, and she shifted it. It's like going from AM to FM. They're not even the same thing. One's frequency modulation, one's amplitude modulation. The same thing is with our aura. We have all these different facets and aspects of our aura, auric field and energy field, that if you shift to them, you can see all kinds of things that you otherwise wouldn't see if you're just looking at the plain old aura. I don't know why I brought that up. So anyway. Franny, do you have anything to share or any question to ask? Or both? I can't hear you. Can you unmute?
Sure. I have two questions, one personal and one global.
Okay.
I'm inching my way forward to closing out a project that you and I have talked about previously.
Yes.
And so I just wanted to see if you have any further guidance or insights on that. And I'm not feeling well right now, so I'm kind of pulling in and going to rest this weekend, but I am getting closer to closure. So
Let me
that
give you
feels good.
a double answer, and I'm so good at this. I can speak out of the left side of my mouth and the right side of my mouth with equal clarity. I can share diametrically opposed ideas as if they're both true at the same time, because that often is the reality of spiritual stuff. For the most part, it's actually going relatively smooth. I'm being shown that it's relatively smooth, but there are still some bumps in the road coming up for you. And that's what I think you're sensing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's not going to be major. And and your high self wants you to know when you hear about them, give them a chance to soak in. So and just as you process through it, you'll say, oh, I don't like this, but I know how to get through this, kind of a thing. So
Okay. All right. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
The other, Pat sent us an email the other day from Patricia Cota Robles, and she talks about the incoming energies between now and the end of the year. Did you have a chance to read that, Jeff?
I skimmed over it. And here's how I know. There's lots of wonderful, wonderful authors and sources of information out there. And what I've learned is I just got overwhelmed trying to read all of it. So what I let myself do is if I'm guided in the moment to read it, I read it. And if I'm not, I say, okay, it's not for me now. It's not that it's not invaluable. It is. It's wonderful. It's just it's not for me at that moment. But I did skim over it, and I thought, boy, this is kind of the same thing we've been talking about, which makes sense because we're all recognizing that we have all these incoming energies. So what I read about it, I said, well, that seems to be true.
Okay.
But I've read like 20% of it. I didn't read the whole thing. I'm going to full disclaimer up front.
She definitely had the same, what would I say, same guidance or perception of you, that there's so much light coming in, and especially between November 11th and the winter solstice. And then there's kind of a call to light workers to just, stay grounded, know that you're in the right place at the right time, and be heart-centered, all of that. And she says that there may be a crumbling of some of the social structures that really need to crumble and go away because they're based on hate and greed and violence and corruption. And so, it doesn't say put your seatbelt on, but she does talk about some things that have to happen before the era of peace can be ushered in, you might say. So yeah, I was just wanting to kind of put that out there and see what others' reactions to that were.
Well, I'll start, and if anyone else wants to chime in and has something to share, please do. June has talked about that, and for those who knew June, that's wonderful, but you don't. But she was talking about this way back in the 1970s and 80s about the incoming time where the old systems have to dissolve away, and as the new energies come in, and that's certainly true now. I don't know if anyone's noticed it. Every time I just think, okay, the energy stabilized for a while and then it ramps up some more again. And that's where I've just had another phase of it. I almost couldn't sleep a few nights ago. It was coming in, I was buzzing. It's a part of that double hump, but it's also that's coming in, that's integrating into the soul group's energy. And then, okay, you guys are ready for some more. And it's coming up, raising the earth's frequency, the soul groups, and our individually, and we each get a different piece of that. So I can echo that, yes, that's true. The old systems of government, the old systems of some of the old social structures have to fall away as the new ones come in. And that brings us kind of into what I always think of Anthony Robbins, that inspirational speaker. He talked way back in the 1980s. He had an inspirational series called Power Talk. Anyway, the long story short, he calls where we're moving into something. It's wonderful. It's so great. And we're moving in. And then as we get about halfway through, we're neither where we were nor where we're going. We're in, he calls that no man's land or no person's land, if you want to make it generic. And that's kind of where we are now, where you can see things, the disintegration, you can see things coming in, but they haven't quite, crystallized, and you're wondering, hey, is everything going to be fine? And I agree with her. Stay centered in your higher guidance, stay heart-centered, and just let yourself be guided, and don't get caught up in that stuff out there, because it's not our stuff. Our higher guidance will guide us into what is our stuff. All we have to do is just walk it in faith, or walk it heart-centered. So I would absolutely echo that. I would agree. Yes. Does anyone else have anything to share? Oh, if you're saying, I can't hear you, Brooke, if you're saying something, you're okay. It's okay. You can stay muted.
I said, I guess not.
Okay. Anyway, yeah. And what there was that what is it? Chinese or Tao proverbs, may you live in interesting times. They say sometimes it's a proverb, some say it's a curse, because usually interesting times also means turbulent times. And it's one thing to read about it in the history books. It's quite another thing when we're living through it ourselves, because we're on the receiving end of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
If we still have Lisa and Marcy.
Yes, I'm going to get to it next. Lisa,
Thank
do you have anything to share or anything to ask, or both?
Hi Jeff, how are you?
I am well.
Let's see. This is kind of more on a personal level. I was at a crystal rock show with a friend last week, and I ran into a friend I hadn't seen for a long time. And the person that she was with, he started kind of bringing in a message and kind of doing a reading for me. And I didn't really feel anything from what he was saying. And so I'm just curious if what was coming through to him was actually for me, or if it was more of him reading himself.
Boy, well, all three are actually present, and you probably picked up on that. So
Mhm.
I'm going to say, in the respect that he's talking about you, as you were saying it, I was shown there's this, I'm going to call it another aspect of you, but it's part of an aspect of you that you interact with. So it's not like it's some abstract, remote aspect of you that you never deal with. It has to do with that aspect of you and the paths associated with that. And you can integrate some or quite a bit, or probably not all, but of elements from that energetically, and bring it into your life if you are so guided. I think this is the universe and your higher guidance using him to bring that through for your awareness. And now it's like, it's like any piece of information or opportunity. What do I want to do with it? Is this for me? Or if it is for me, how is it for me? How can I, and you're waiting. It looks like you're looking, it looks like some guidance is coming in for some possibilities of, well, if this is true, then what am I going to do with it, kind of a thing, or how will I use it? I'm not sure I'm saying that exactly right, but something along that lines.
Okay.
Yeah. But mainly, boy, it really, I'm sorry, I'm not so good on the poker face. I have to, your higher guidance that wants me to share parts of it, but not other parts. All I'm going to say, just let me share this. There are elements in that can be of value to you, and it may not be entirely apparent up front. It's one of those things that I don't know if it's ever happened to you, where something happens, it looks like it's incidental, and then at some later point, all of a sudden you realize that incidental piece of information, or that incidental happening, becomes a very key piece of an opportunity or some characteristic that we can use ourselves. And it's along that lines. I'm skirting point talking about this. That's as much as I can talk about it without giving away the piece that she doesn't want me to give away.
Okay.
It's a good thing, but in that your awareness of it and your connection with it and your ability to use, I'm going to say, the energies associated with the information. I'm going to say it that way.
Okay.
And if you want to talk one-on-one, we can do so. Just give me a call and we can talk. But I think you need to explore it some more.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was saying it was something I'm not aware of from my childhood that I haven't dealt with or processed, if I can remember it correctly. And then he said there was a guide, female guide, and this was very interesting. He said something about me standing on her shoulders, and that would assist me with this process or something like that. I didn't really quite understand it, but so anyways, hasn't really come into my thought process too much. So
Yeah, and it may not. It's not necessarily something you can have now, but your exposure to it, even if you're not consciously aware of it, will benefit you later.
okay.
And I'd like to talk to you more one-on-one on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Okay. And do you have anything else to share or anything else?
you. I've just been going through just kind of integrating a course I took, and it was pretty amazing. Completion of something I started back in Atlantis, at least one of my lifetimes in Atlantis. I'm sure it was, Atlantis was 75,000 years, so there's a lot of time there. So, yeah, I just completed something that I started back then, and it's just been pretty amazing.
Well, that's awesome. You can tell me more about it some other time.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
All right. Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you. All right, Marcy, I didn't mean to make you last.
That's okay. That's okay. I'm just happy to soak it all up and gives me more to integrate when I listen to everybody. So when Pat came on, as soon as she started talking, I heard this is going to be good. And right from the start, I started to vibrate and feel a lot of tension in my body. So that was cool. That was really cool. And it's still going on. The tension part of it. Let's see, the thing you're talking about with the parallel deals, that's familiar, real familiar. And the first couple times it happened, it was like, you think you're losing it. You think you've made a mistake.
Yeah.
And then it finally sinks in. This really happened.
Yeah.
It's trippy. It's trippy. Let's see, what else? The medical, since you said it, and you said, I don't know why I'm saying this, then I'll say this. Physically, I'm experiencing stuff, and I have been for a long time, but like in my temples, like itching, stuff coming out. I can feel like when I bring my attention to certain things that you'd think was like a positive or more higher frequency, there'll be like agitation in my temples, like I want to scratch. And maybe that's something you can use your that ability with to look at medically and see. Do you see something there?
Up medically?
Yeah.
There's something there, but it's not like a real anything you need to be concerned about. You're experiencing at the physical level, and this happens, I will tell you, more with females than males. And it has to do with the fact that archetypally, females, the female spiritual identity is akin to the body of creation. In any mythology, and I'm going to get back to your question, I'll kind of tell you a little bit more about some of what's going on. There's other pieces of it that are being kept from my awareness, and probably it's for me not to know. But in any mythology or spiritual realm, where the female is the top goddess, where the number one god is a female archetypal energy, her body is, it used to be the world, but her body is the universe. A woman's identity, the universe is, you could say, feminine in that. Certainly the whole, what I experienced myself, the Holy Spirit is feminine, and so is women. Wisdom is tied to the feminine. Interestingly, there's a male aspect of it, but it's tied to the feminine, and it has to do with your identity with the body and what I call the body and essence of creation. Anyway, so what happens is that as energies and things happen, they manifest into females much more into their bodies, I've noticed, and into their world as an extension of that. Deborah is definitely an incarnation of that. I always say anything that's happening spiritually with you, energetically with you, is going to manifest in your body and or your life events, usually both. And that is what is happening with you. And it has to do with these really high, especially since you're in Hawaii. Boy, that is, that's Elohim Central. You're right there with the beings and the super high creative energies. And what it is, it's coming in, and you have some patterns left over, and they're connections that your mental body has that are out of phase, I don't know, out of resonance with the energies coming in, and it causes some physical symptoms. That's part of it. That's a big part.
Is there anything, since it's mental, I mean, all I know is to just keep going back in my heart as much as I can.
Yeah.
Is there anything?
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead, please.
Is there anything else that you see would be helpful? Or?
Yes, and you're not going to like the answer.
You're not going to tell me to eat meat, are you?
No. It's just from your high self and this one guide, and it's a Huna guide. Interesting. I don't recall seeing this guide before. And we all have lots and lots of guides, and they kind of come into the foreground when it's time, and they stay in the background the rest of the time. But it has to do, just give it time. This is a slow process with you. It ties to a bunch of stuff that needs to happen kind of at this pace it's happening.
Okay.
So I'd like to tell you it's going to go away in the next month, but I think it's going to be with you for a little while.
Okay. It's been going on for quite a while. So it's just, since you mentioned it, I thought, well, I'll throw it out there and see.
Yeah. And it's I think you're going to run into a period where it may get a slightly more intense for a little bit. And then you're going to see it wane off thereafter in the days and weeks and after that. But it has to do with some alignments that are happening. That's a piece of all the different pieces that are happening within your being of alignment that are, each piece you can notice individually, but they're actually, it's like, if we think of ourselves as a big instrument, we're being tuned from high to low and all the different aspects, and that's what's happening with you.
Does it, as we awaken on this level, does it automatically go to all the other levels as well? But we're awakened on all levels?
My short answer is going to be, it does go to many other levels, some more so than others in some aspects. I'm seeing not only levels, I'm seeing aspects as well. And it seems to be that it's happening to the extent that it's appropriate for those different aspects. And I think one of maybe the next spiritual insights, one of the things that I'm seeing more and more of as the frequency raises, because everyone's awareness is expanding out to all these different aspects of their own being. And we can think of these as past lives, future lives, different, the different realms, the different aspects of our being that exist in the different realms. There's those, and for those aspects of us that are living other lives and doing, they also have their own individualized, like low self and middle self and their own stuff. What happens is as our awareness expands out, we're becoming more integrated and more holistic. And what happens is I call it holistically. We're operating more holistically in the entirety of our being. As some of this other stuff starts moving around, things start shifting back and forth between the different aspects of our being. And it kind of happens like water kind of finds its own level. And what's going on is so as these energies and this tuning is happening, it's touching the other ones in the way that's right for them. We work on this piece over here and this aspect over here and over here and over here. And slowly, and this is an idea in Eastern religions, it's called simultaneous arising, but it also happens within our own being. As we're being raised up in our frequency, the different aspects of us, it's all kind of happening at once. And it all happens, each piece gets tuned and aligned and energized in a way that's right for it. That allows us to have greater harmony between all the parts at once. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what's happening with you. It's happening with everyone, and especially those on the committed spiritual path. I mean, everyone on this Zoom call here, it's happening. All of you, I can see every last one of you, and each in your own way. That expanded awareness is allowing extended integration of your being and operating more and more holistically. And when that happens, we may not sometimes think that any growth is happening, but the problem is because it's such a big volume. I mean, major changes can happen. It's like the ocean, you could add 1 billion gallons of water and it raises a quarter of an inch or something, it's that kind of a thing. And that's what's happening with everyone. And that's what's happening with you. So that's my extended answer to your short question. That's why it is going to different aspects of your being. Yes, it's going to different levels of your being in the way that's right for that aspect or that level.
Okay. And I've been using your meditations, especially that awareness one, and then the spiritual, what was it? Communication, I think was the other one.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been using them off and on, but the last couple times I used them, it was phenomenal. It was like, I thought, stuff was just pouring out of the top of my head. And, the whole next day was a whole different world. It's just, it's so cool that those are, they're not like a one-time only deal. They just keep on giving.
Yeah, and that has to do with the nature of, I'm going to go back to June's work. It's all about what we do is about connection. And we do teach, like, as you all know, if they've taken the seminars, we teach meditative techniques and we have the different cycles. But what's happening in those cycles is, and we don't tell anyone during the intuitive mastery, but the Elohim beings are connecting them when they're clearing out old lower connections, higher connections are being made. And once you have this connection, I call this the connection that guides me to all other connections, because as we're ready, our guidance is going to move you to the next level that you're ready to go. So it's not like a one-time event where you learn X, Y, and Z, and the next course you're going to learn X, beyond X, Y, and Z, you're going to go to X1, Y1, Z1, or whatever. It's all about whatever you're ready for, they're going to move you to do that. So that's what happens during all these meditations that we do. Whatever you're ready for is what's going to happen.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's awesome. I'm not really very functional now. I can lay down for hours during the day and just lay there, but I'm sure it'll pass.
You know why that's happening, right?
Well, I think there's a lot going on.
Yeah, a lot of integration.
Yeah, and it doesn't feel bad. It's just forget about functioning. Just forget it.
Well, yeah, a lot of times, especially because it's not like it just happens. It's a process where we're getting more higher connections. We can feel it, and old ones fall away, and then we have to integrate that. Excuse me. Excuse me. And while that's happening, sometimes all I can do is just be. And just as you said, we're not very, not very useful or not very functional. And sometimes it can last for days or longer. Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it has already. Maybe it's the new lifestyle. I don't know.
Well, again, I attribute so much to just Hawaii because of the creative energies coming in physically to that. It's like a little vortex there on Hawaii. It's just incredible. Also.
Yeah, it's intense for sure. For sure.
Thank you. Well, thank you for asking.
Thank you, Ellen. I love you guys all. I'm going to see your faces here on the replay.
Yes. Does anyone else have anything to share? Any thoughts, any questions before we close out? And I apologize for coughing. That was my fifth. The chakra here was being, as you were talking, some energies came in. So
I'll add something, Jeff. I know Teresa had a chance, but my thinking is, as we were talking, as you were sharing, and people were sharing Pat's comments too, is, the different planes and the different dimensions and stuff. I find so often that, especially recently, it seems like as I meditate, I'm here, but I'm enjoying being there a lot more. And it just seems to, you're kind of living two different places at the same time.
Mhm.
And I know that those of you that knew Angie near the end of her time with us, she was on the other side living there too, and living in both planes. And when we here would try to ground her to keep her here a little longer, but yet she was living at that other side in another plane, I guess is a way to put it. And so I find myself as I'm meditating or even in this life thinking, okay, I'm enjoying here, but I'm really enjoying over there. And that feeling and that sense of all that love and all that stuff that comes through when I'm in that point in time. And not that I'm not wanting to leave here, but I'm really enjoying there. That makes sense.
Yeah, isn't it blissful?
Yeah, and it just hits so fast and so hard, it gets all emotional because a lot of times the tears will just start flowing because you just feel that love coming through. And so, but the last time we were on too, we talked about paths and even from a professional, personal side. And as we start to think about more family decisions here, like changing our home to a different home, we're in that process. Do we want to sell this fifth wheel and move to another pull trailer, a little bit more room and a little more homey feeling? Think, another life decision here. And so I just think, well, am I getting any guidance on where we should be going with some of this? Because they are life decisions that affect both of us, and now and for a few years out.
And if that's in the form of a question, I'm just going to treat that like a question. And the answer is you're in the middle of a lot of stuff coming in that's going to contribute to what you're guided to do. And you've got to, so I think I said this before, it looks like you've got a few ways you can be guided in how you want to experience it. And I think you're still in that process. And interestingly, you're kind of not in a holding pattern, but I'm going to call it, it's kind of a semi-holding pattern. And there's something that's being resolved that will let you move past that holding pattern.
Right.
Excuse me. Boy, that just certainly brought up some energies there. So yes, the answer isn't there yet, but it's coming. That's my short answer.
Right.
Anyone else?
I just wanted to say that I feel like myself and quite a few other people that I've spoken to, we all feel like we're in a holding pattern. And it's not a bad thing or a good thing. It's just that the way we look at maybe our homes or what we're doing is not the same as it used to be. It's like I said, it's not a good thing or a bad thing. And the frequencies are certainly higher and higher and higher, if for lack of another word to use. But, and what I hear, and John and I hear and he's here too, by the way, in the resonances that we daily hear, they're strong. They're so strong. Sometimes you almost, especially when you go to bed and everything's still, you almost want to put your hands up to your ears because you feel like you're going to be lifted away by them because they're so strong. So I just wanted to share that. And one thing I want to share with the group and with you is that I don't know if you realize what a gift this is for, like, say, the 8 of us here having the opportunity to speak personally with you when you're in that wonderful state of beingness where you can reach out to your guidance and to the universe and bring in information and answers both on a personal level and a collective level. And from my heart of all hearts, I'm just saying how much I am so grateful for you and your work, and Deborah and her work, and you two as a team.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you. But you know, it's a privilege to be here and do it. And we all receive information. That's the thing that I think is so wonderful. And when we're together, each of us, I mean, I'm seeing it, I'm being shown it, that's more accurate. Information, energies and information is coming through you. And so, and it's all energetically being shared with the whole group. So it's, you know, thank you for the blessing of saying that. But I believe that we're all blessed by just being together, because when we come together, things can happen that just don't happen when we're by ourselves. You know, it's a multiplicative. I don't know, some people say exponential, whatever it is, it's powerful. And it's such an awesome opportunity. I really look forward to doing these every month. So with that, I'm supposed to say something. They've just now said it 3 times. And I think this applies to everybody in the group, each in your own way. There's things that we know that we're to do in life, and we're like, why isn't this happening? And something that showed up one time in a tea leaf reading, interestingly, with Kay, this was like 25 years ago. She says, yeah, this is coming, but it hasn't crystallized yet. The time for this isn't yet. So it's a combination of what we're supposed to do. And also, as we all know, sometimes it's when it's supposed to happen, and not only a function of time, but certain events have to happen along with that convergence of time and what we have to do, then it can manifest. And until then, we're just wondering, like, why are we in this holding pattern? Well, it may feel like a holding pattern, but reality is we're waiting for the unfoldment of the universe to happen so that it's the right time. So thank you all. And until next month, blessings and light and love, and we'll talk again soon. Hopefully, maybe see some of you at the meditation.
Love you all. Thank you.
Love, 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 love.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.